Hey there, welcome to episode 92 of the More Than Anxiety podcast. My name is Megan. I'm going to be your host today, and I'm so excited to be able to introduce you to Niomi Hurley. Naomi is an amazing keynote speaker, the founder of Get Up and Grow Consulting, and the host of the Catching the Octopus podcast. She works with businesses and individuals to enhance performance through personal and group transformations using her understanding and modifying human behavior. She does workplace psychological safety and leadership capacity building. That's a lot. She's developed a customized package aimed at increasing focus and accountability that delivers outstanding results in your business and in your life by closing the gap on where you are to where you want to be. She also has one-to-one consultation sessions for as both a therapist, an energy healer, or a coach. And she explores your subconscious and the drivers behind your behaviors and blocks to help her clients create meaningful change in their lives in both individual settings or based on site as part of a corporate well-being program. Her mission is to spark curiosity and awareness and growth in businesses and in individuals that empowers them to move towards self-actualization and to achieve more. Get Up and Grow Consulting provides a full range of organizational psychology strategies and HR, culture, safety, management, leadership, employee profiling, and improved productivity. And I just got a really cool past life regression done with her. So you're going to love this podcast. She has so much to share. Enjoy. So I would love to hear what all you do because you do lots of different things, but I know that we've talked about a few of them before, but tell me more about what you do.
So I have two elements. Well, my background was in the corporate space. So I love leveling up leaders. So I do work in that leadership capacity space, but less about what they need to do and more about who they need to become. And
Mhm.
that kind of filters through as well into the individual services that I offer. So I offer something called Rapid Transformational Therapy, or RTT, and that's facilitated under hypnosis. And it was actually created by a lady named Marissa Peer in the UK. So I trained with her school to be able to do that. And it's it's mind blowing, some of the results that my clients get. So they say it takes between 1 to 3 sessions to be able to get the results you're after. But majority of my clients see some significant changes after one, which for me was it was a little bit hard to believe at first.
Mhm.
But the way that the therapy works, it kind of is the same as about 10 talk sessions. So a lot of people can get a lot of change out of 10 talk sessions.
Yeah.
Um, but why I think it's so magical is it actually, while the client is under hypnosis, we actually go back and explore, what events, times, happenings have occurred over their lifetime, and a majority of it's in childhood, that have actually established this belief system for the way that they feel, act, or behave or think. Sorry. So once
Mm.
they then can identify what's contributed to that, then while we're in the session, we just reframe and we go on and we do some positive programming at the end. So it's really remarkable.
And that's, yeah, because one session, I mean, people spend years in therapy. And I think that I'm always a fan of therapy, right? Like, I want people to go to therapy. I think everybody should have a therapist.
Yeah, agreed.
So, yes, go to therapy. And one session is amazing. So, I know, like, do you work specifically with people who, I mean, if you have somebody with some sort of like trauma that they remember, like they know it was a big T trauma. Is this like a big trauma situation, or is this more like, I just don't know why I feel this way? I don't know why I'm always so anxious or why I'm so angry or whatever it is that's coming up for them. Do you have guidelines on that?
It can be both, because
Mhm.
a big trauma situation for us, normally what trauma is, and I'm not taking away from the pain of events, but it's less about the event and it's more usually about the lack of support afterwards.
Mhm.
That's usually what actually creates the trauma, is that feeling of helplessness or not being supported or loved or enough. And so the subconscious grabs that and goes, oh, when you're in that space, you're not safe. So we
Mhm.
need to set up these mechanisms to try and keep you safe. And whether that presents as flashbacks or anxiety or, other things that, high emotional dependence, untrusting with other people and partners, and however that kind of manifests through, it's usually a few things that have happened, and then sometimes that one event will just cement it in.
Yeah.
Um, for others, there's no trauma or major trauma. And some people come in and they'll say to me, "Oh, I think it's this and this and this." And when we go back into the session, it's none of those things, because the thing with the subconscious is it's not stuff we realize, right? Otherwise, it'd be in the conscious mind.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. Can you tell me a story? Like, do you feel like you have one you can tell without like outing your clients or anything like that? I don't want you to get in trouble,
Yeah.
but I would love to hear. I know you told me one before, and you're welcome to tell me the same one because nobody else has heard it.
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, I would love to hear a story. These kinds of things get me so excited.
Well, every session I have gets me excited. It's really
Yeah.
amazing because every one of them are profoundly different, even though the process is very similar that I go through. But the aha moment that the client has and the emotion that comes through from the scenes is unique to each one, which blows my mind. Um, the thing about it as well is it's less about the scene they're going back to, and it's more about connecting with the emotion, because what the subconscious mind does is it actually connects with the event at the age cognition of when the
Mm,
event happened. So
okay.
as adults, we might look at that and go, well, that's silly to get upset about, but the subconscious is still 4, 5, 6, 7, where it actually still feels like it's relevant to hold on to. Um, that example I shared with you, I will share that
Hmm.
one. So I
Yeah.
had a client come in for anxiety, and she suffered quite severely from anxiety, and she was still functioning, but it was difficult for her to show up and function.
Yeah.
Um, and even when I spoke with her, you could see her energy just wasn't leveled out. When you're in that anxiety space, you're just kind of looking around and you're just not relaxed.
Yeah.
So we went back and she had 3 or 4 scenes that came up, but for her, there was one that was really prevalent. Now, when we first started talking before the session, she actually said, "Well, look, I don't know what's going to come up because I had a great childhood. My parents were awesome. I didn't get bullied at school. Like, I have no idea how this has come about." So when we went back, there was the scene that really stood out the most for her was one when she was 4 years old, and she'd woken up for a nightmare. And so she went out, and when she went in the hallway, she was feeling uneasy, like there might be someone there. And, her mind was playing tricks on her from the nightmare.
Right.
So she went in to go and speak with her mum about it and wake her mum up. And her mum, like most mums have done in the past, has kind of gone, "Oh, you'll be fine, go back to sleep." And her little 4-year-old mind just created this story that, your mum is awesome. She's always there for you. She's always supporting you. But in this time of need, she's not there. And if she's not there, no one's going to be there. And so
Yeah.
it just created this anxiety all the time for her that she wasn't enough and she wasn't supported. And afterwards, she actually said, "I'm really embarrassed. Like, that wasn't a scene that was really significant."
Oh,
Yeah, I said, "Don't be embarrassed because that's the subconscious mind." And so I love telling that example because it's not what people expect. They think,
yeah.
a major trauma has caused it, but for her, it wasn't.
Yeah. I think that's so important to know because I've mentioned to people before on my podcast that 2023, I just had like a lot more anxiety, had things going on in my life that were, it was just a lot. I mean, it was a lot of emotion, a lot of things I was thinking. And so I did what so many people who are anxious do. I was digging in. I'm like, surely I have repressed something. I got
Yeah.
nothing. And the more that I looked, the more I was like, oh my God, what if something happened to me and it was so bad that I like shut it out? And no, that's like, really, it's not that. I was just giving it so much attention, but I think it's so good to know. I think it's really, really important for people to know in this place where we're all trying to figure out what happened. Sometimes it's not
No.
something huge. It was, and done in love. I mean, mom was exhausted and
Yeah.
she told her 4-year-old, it's okay, sweetheart, go back to bed. I mean, I've
Yeah.
done it. I don't know how many times. No, you're
Yeah.
okay. Go back to bed.
Yeah. And
So,
and I think that's the thing. And I was just referring before as well. It's not the event usually, it's that what happens after the event. that's what the subconscious mind grabs onto, because we all have events. There's not one person I've met, even outside of my thought clients, that hasn't had something major, some major life influence.
Right.
Um, and we all show up differently from that, right? There's some people that have
Mhm.
increased coping skills, and there's some people that have had more challenging times afterwards. But it's that afterwards, what's the emotion connection? What's the subconscious grabbed and stored? And then that's what comes through in the sessions.
Yeah. Have you seen something where at certain ages, it's certain events that correspond with that age? Like when you're 2, these are the things that your subconscious turns to, because we know brain development changes, right? And I mean, we learn at 2, this is what we do, and at 3 and at 4, and when you're 5, this is what your brain is looking at. So do you notice that, like, oh, well, if this happened, I'm guessing you were around 4.
I haven't seen that. I've had clients go back to in the womb, because the subconscious is
Wow.
the brain, right? So the subconscious doesn't have I only remember from this age. So to me, there's no particular age. It's more the event and the meaning that's put behind it, rather than that particular milestone of when the brain develops.
I think that's scary, first of all, but amazing. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know if I want to remember being in the womb.
Yeah.
I don't want to go back that far. But how amazing that that can happen. So, when you have walked people through this, have they been able to actually remember being in the womb?
Yeah. So when I was doing my training, I heard people talking about it, and I'm right, really like I'm quite spiritual, but at the same time really skeptical, because I've got such a
Also
logical
me, yeah.
mind. Yeah.
Yeah.
So when they first started talking about it, I was kind of like, yeah, whatever. And then we were doing practice sessions during our training, and one of the sessions I was in as a client, I actually went back in the womb, and I was like, oh, this is
Oh,
real. Yeah. And then probably, a couple of clients in, I had a client that he was saying, it's dark, there's no scenes coming up for me. And I'm like, that's okay, just go with it. And it took me a little while. And then I was like, oh, hang on a minute. I said, how does your body feel? She goes, oh, it feels like it's floating. And so then I went into, what can you hear? If you can't see anything, what can you hear? And then things started coming through. And she was hearing some of the trauma that her mum was experiencing while she was in the womb. So yeah. So, and some people will say to me, oh, but it's a story that someone told me. I don't know if it's real. And my thing
mm,
is, well, whatever's coming up is real, because it wouldn't come up. You haven't come here and planned it. And it's not usually, like I said, those expected things that people go, it's going to be this, and this.
mhm.
Um, but yeah, that was amazing. And then the same sort of thing happened to me with the past life, right? So you and I have
Yeah.
talked about this as well. So I
Yes.
I then I heard people talking about going into past lives, and I was like, yeah, whatever. And I had a session done on me, and I went into a past life, and I was like, wow. So then I grabbed a group of my friends, and I went, can I test something out on you? And now I also facilitate past life regressions. So I'll either go, let's look at events in this lifetime, or for other people, it's like, let's look at events over your soul's existence. Like, what's happened to actually create where you're at now?
And this was something that we did together, which was the first time I was super nervous. Like I told Niomi when we started, I'm like, I'm kind of nervous as I'm a church girl and I'm not sure if this is like going to be okay. And it was so interesting. And I just told you that I'm also like very spiritual, but also very skeptical.
Yeah.
So, and this is true even with my own faith. I'm like, yeah, I think so. It's faith,
Yeah.
right? Like we have to lean into that at some point.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay. But when it started, I'm like, wait, like I can't make this stuff up on the fly. Like it was one of those things it was confusing. I'm like, I don't understand why I think this. And I even told you a couple of times, I'm like, I think I'm overthinking this.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
overthinking this. But yeah, so Naomi walked me through a past life regression and I went, what did we do? 3 times? I think
Yes.
3. Yeah, we did 3 times. And so the first time there were like 2 lives that came up at the same time. It was like a split screen. All I could say, it's like watching Zoom in your
Yeah.
head. Like, right, there's one side was one and one was the other.
Yeah.
And that was crazy.
Well, that was amazing. That's the first time I've ever had a client come up with that. And that, again, a lot of it is interpreting, but I feel like I'm actually sometimes channeling and guided to do things as well. So I suppose I need to have a disclaimer on that. I don't believe that I'm the almighty powerful, and no, I am still human. But there's times
Yeah.
where I'll actually get a tingling on the top of my head, and when the top of my head tingles, I'm speaking, and it's me speaking, but they're not my ideas. Is the best way I can describe
Mhm.
it. Um,
Yeah.
and what came through for me with you when you were in that space was, and I think I said this, I went, are you meant to be comparing these lives because they contrasted so much differently, and that
Yeah.
ended up resonating with you.
It was funny afterward, I started thinking about it a little more, and that was the one I think that stuck the most. The one kind of freaked me out. Um, and the other one was just super fun. But
Yeah.
this one, I was like, this is my inner dialogue at all times. It really was my you should be this conversation. And it was very much both sides of me playing against each other. And neither was bad, but it's always been this like fighting against one, but also fighting against the other. And it was funny. It was very much like my subconscious just split in half and was like, here you go.
Yeah.
Here's
Yeah.
both sides. And you're fighting against yourself. And it was really, that's what it felt like the whole time.
Yeah, and I think for you, it kind of come up as a an either or belief system, and then we kind of talked
Mhm.
about it and reframed it to go, what about have both? What about
Yeah.
an instead of an either or? Because things on both sides of the coin are still one coin, right? So they're still
Right.
complementing each other in different ways.
Yeah, and I do think that we did we did that one and then we went back to the weird flight attendant one, which I still don't understand and it creeps me out every time I think about it. I'm like, I don't like that one. Like it
Yeah,
kind of
yeah,
creeps me out. And then the really fun one with the African man. But the thing that has stuck with me so much was that towards the end when you had me follow that soul up.
yeah,
And we got up there and it was like I could tell that there was someone there, but I was never going to see it. Like I almost knew, like I was like, hello. And all I got out of the whole thing was, I already told you this morning. And
yeah,
that stuck with me so much. Like, no, I already told you this morning.
yeah.
We already talked about this.
And
And it settled it. Like it was like that was okay.
yeah,
It
yeah,
settled it for me.
and it's a lot. It's just and I think the feeling in that space. So that's where the gold happens, to be honest. And I call it like an interlife experience. So it's an in between live space that would take people in, and that's where the real gold comes because that's where all the really good downloads come. But
Mhm.
when I'm talking to people about it, I talk about a past life regression because people understand that more. And you probably will get this being in it, but you wouldn't fathom what it would be like to be in that space with those souls and those energies until you're actually in the session and you're doing it, right? So um
Yeah.
and I think some people see things, some people don't, and for everyone that's unique. So I've had some people see huge angels that they've said like they're 3 stories high, big angelic
Wow.
beings, and then I've had others saying they just see light orbs just floating around. But it's again same as the RTT. It's less about what they're seeing, and it's
Mhm.
about what the information that they're getting. It's kind of like a divine download, for lack of a better.
Yeah. And mine was very much it was almost like oh, okay. So we're gonna go there again, huh? I mean, it was very much like long story, but I'll give you the summation of it. But that morning, I had started every morning. I get up and I do a devotion, I do a prayer journal, and I was nervous, right? Like I was gonna do this past life thing, but I had been journaling about this question I had for how to create this thing in my coaching business, and it was like I had this great idea, and I was solid. Like I finished journaling, and I'm like, whoa. That was crazy. But then you go back, I start questioning myself again. So I
Yeah.
brought it up right before we started. And it was really like I went into this dark room where it was like, you're not going to see me here. And I'm like, am I even supposed to be here? Like, I don't even know if I'm supposed to be here. Like, I'm going to get kicked out. Is this like heaven? Where am I? So, and all I get was, I already told you this morning. And I was like, oh, I'm sorry. Okay, sorry. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, but that's really what it felt like. I was like, sorry. It was like getting in
Yeah.
trouble with your dad.
And most of the people that get it as well, they feel an overwhelming sense of love and they feel
Yes.
safe, but the communication isn't done. Oh, darling, it's always really direct. It's like, here's what
Yeah.
That's what you need to know. And I think even when people go, if we're going into that spiritual aspect to a clairvoyant or a reader, you know, we don't get told things we're not meant to know. And I don't know if anyone's been to one, I go, I want to know this. And they're like, not getting anything on that. So it's kind of in that space. It's whatever you're meant to know and whatever you're meant to be shared is what gets shared. And that blows my mind because
Mhm.
like I said, although I'm spiritual, I'm also very logical minded, and it took me a while to
Yeah.
actually accept that.
Yeah, it was really, really interesting. And you're right. Like it was very dark. Like it was one of those things where it definitely was dark and I was starting to wait to feel like, okay, I need to go or to get scared, but I didn't ever get there. It was more like something's supposed to happen. Like, what am I doing? Like, am I doing it wrong? And then, but it was never a scary thing. I did wait though I'm like, this is going to get scary in a second, but I never did. I never did. Huh.
Yeah, and look, I've got another friend who had a religious upbringing, and when I grabbed my friends together, she was really hesitant as well. So I can connect and relate with you with that. And she had me reassuring her, this is definitely something that's more of a divine thing. Where's it coming from? And as you know, I invoke a lot of blessings and things like that
Yes.
during the process. So
Yes.
I only feel like I usually say my maid upstairs because not everyone has a religious kind of connection, and
Right.
it's different than saying source, universe, God, whatever people believe in.
Right.
But I believe we all have a connection with
Yeah.
that energy, and that's what I tap into to use it. So it's always I've not had anyone that's had a terrible experience. I have had one client that was in a past life and did start feeling like their body was contorting. So they
Ooh.
were saying they felt physically uncomfortable. And so I do energy healing as well. So in that space, I actually did some energy healing and used some of my
Mhm.
crystals. And again, just doing whatever I felt like I need to do this.
Right.
And they actually had like this full release. And for them, that was what the session was. There was this like tension that was
Ah.
stuck that was actually inhibiting them that they needed to release. So everyone's so different. It's really magical. It's so great.
I think magical is the best way I could describe it. And is something that I'm so grateful that I got to experience that because it's not anything I've ever experienced before. And it was really fun. And I think that just knowing more about why we are the way that we are is so important and not necessarily trying to get to the bottom of things all the time, but just knowing that like even in both modalities, whether it's the RTT, is that you said RTT, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So whether it's that or the past life regression, they're both really great tools to be able to help people start to heal,
Yeah.
and that we don't have to spend years and years and years getting there is so important because there are so many people that think I'm going to be like this forever. And if I'm not, it's going to take me the rest of my life to feel good. And I'm like, no, it's not. It's like it's a momentary shift that just happens. You just have to get to the shifting point.
Yeah, yeah, and if we do go a little bit esoteric and look at the whole energy concept, thoughts are things, right? And so we have these thought
Mhm.
forms that we create, and they can create by emotion, and they get stuck in our body. And so what RTT is basically doing is going in and going, okay, let's have a look at these thought forms that have been stuck in here and the emotion that's connected, so we can release them. And the reason why it kind of equates to about 10 talk sessions is if anyone's done talk therapy, usually it starts bubbling stuff up. Each time we go,
Yeah.
it bubbles up something and it bubbles up. And so eventually it opens up and those thought forms come and present themselves. And that's when we have that aha moment, like that's what it is.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so it's really interesting. And there's so many different modalities of different things for different people. People get it from yoga or meditation or talk therapy or RTT.
Yeah.
And I think that's just reaffirming how beautifully unique we all are, right?
Hmm. For sure. Yeah. And I can't even imagine the stories that you've heard in like doing these different like past life regressions and everything else. Just it has to be just amazing. I mean, I'll just like to share like the one that I thought was so fun that I was like, I have no idea what's going on here. At one point, I went back and And it was somewhere in Africa, and I was just some guy that was going to go hunt, but I was going to take like a spear and hunt for fruit. It was the weirdest thing ever. All I knew was that this was one happy guy. Like, I'm like, I don't know, this guy's just like smiling at everybody, like waving to everybody. He was just happy and doing whatever. And I was like, what is happening? And I kept thinking, like, he wanted to show me something in like the jungle, and there were all these trees. I am terrified to go in the woods because I am petrified of snakes. And even in this thing, I'm like, I could remember thinking, I don't really like being in this foresty thing. Like, I didn't like being in there from that. But he's like, no, it's fine. Everything is fine. It was hilarious. Like, I kind of was like, this is funny. It was just so like take me and put me in the exact opposite. Other than I'm pretty happy and I'm always like
Yeah.
waving to people, but it really was the strangest. Like, there's no way. I mean,
Mm.
no way. It could have
Mm.
just been like, oh yeah, this is it.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the things I do say. We just don't make anything happen, just let it happen. Because as soon as we start making something happen, that's the logical mind jumping in again. And,
Right.
I do have some stories, and it depends how open-minded your audience are, but I had one client that went back to a past life that wasn't on the earth realm. And
Oh yeah.
yeah, so that took me a little bit to adjust to, because all of my clients have been humans, and here they were being in a realm that actually wasn't earth, which was confusing for them as well, because they're like,
Yeah.
oh, hang on, these beings don't look like they're humans, but we're all working together in this group and we're not talking, but we all know what each other's thinking, and we're all got this collective goal we're working towards. And I kind of again had this feeling. I just said, "Are you on Earth?" And she's like, "No, I'm not." And then it opened up
Whoa.
to a whole, different space. So I've never been big believer of aliens, but I suppose if you think about it, this universe is so vast. Surely we're not that special and unique that we're the only creatures alive.
Right.
Um,
Right.
but yeah, so there are some things that even challenge me in the session, and I
Yeah.
suppose my role is just to be open-minded and just support the people with their journey on what they're seeing and what they're being shown.
You're good. Because if that would have been me in that conversation, I would have been like, I need to know everything. Really? Like, where do they live? What do they do? Do they like us? Like, have they
Yeah.
been here?
Are they coming? Are they coming to visit? Like,
I know. What do we have to do to stop climate change? Because you ask them while you're there.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Like, you might hold a lot of answers that we need right now.
But yeah, so it's really yeah, it's an amazing kind of thing to be able to do. And even with the RTT, I'm really grateful for that, because it's taken me through this path, but I've seen some amazing change with that as well. And if I can share another
Yeah.
story, this is
I would
probably
love to.
my most profound story. So I had this
Yeah.
gentleman, his sister reached out to me because he was in hospital because he'd harmed himself.
Mm,
And she said, I need him to see someone. This was on a Friday, tomorrow, and I can't get
mm,
in. Will you do it? So I had to be upfront and just disclose and say, well, look, I've worked with people that have talked about harming, but not someone that's harmed. So I just want to know where my expertise lie.
mhm.
Anyway, so he came in for a session, and he was adopted when he was about 3 or 4 months old to me by her family. And one of his scenes was he was only a baby, and he was in the cot in the orphanage, and he was just crying and crying and crying, and no one would come to him.
Oh,
Um,
God.
which is probably, and I think as parents, we've all kind of done that from time to time with our kids, like we've let
Yeah.
them cry it out. But for
Yeah.
this human, he established this sort of, oh, I'm not enough and I'm not loved. So then he went back to another scene where his adoptive dad, would say to him when he got angry, "You're not even my real son." So again, got this belief system of I'm not enough, I'm not
Oh,
loved. And then he went into a scene where he was at work and he turned up drunk. So he had a drinking problem as well. And he was getting the sack from his job. And I'm like, oh, is this the first time you've done this? He said, no, I've done it multiple times. And I said, well, don't you like your job? He goes, no, I love my job. And then we together explored and found out that he was self-sabotaging because he didn't believe he was
mm,
worthy. So
mhm,
yeah, for him, the reframe for him again, I'm a really kind, loving, cuddle person, but this is what I
mhm.
got to say to him. So I said, so the lady that rung me up and brought me in, she's your sister. And he goes, yeah. And I said, so she also who visited you at the hospital? And he goes, yeah, my sister. And I was like, "Oh, who took you to the hospital?" He's like, "My sister." I said, "What else does she do for you?" And he came up with all these things. And then I just said to him, I said, "But she's not your sister, right? Not really by blood." And then his energy sort of just sat there. And I said, "So why do you think she does that?" And then he just had this overwhelming, just started letting emotion out. He goes, "Because she loves me." And I went, "Exactly. So you are lovable and you are enough." And that completely changed his life.
That is
And
amazing.
yeah. And so I, I've had lots of ups and downs in my life, and everything has brought me to here. And my whole body's
Yeah.
got goosebumps. But
I know you're gonna make me tear up.
yeah, I don't know how to express the gratitude to all of those universal pathways that allow me
Yeah.
to do this for people, because it's next level amazing.
Yeah. Everything lines up, doesn't it?
Yeah, it
It
does.
all it just lines up for us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so he went on, he did come back for a second session. He did stop drinking after that, though, for a
Wow.
week. He didn't have any alcohol, and then he reduced his drinking down. He came back, though, because he ended up getting COVID, and he had a lady friend he'd met at the time, and they had to isolate together, and
Mm.
she needed a whole heap of healing done. So her influence was bringing back some of those thoughts and feelings again.
Mm.
So he broke off the relationship after the COVID isolation and came back
Wow.
to me to say, how can I actually get her out of my mind? Why am I gripping to her so much? So we're like, okay, let's go and explore that. So we went in and we explored why that was happening. But yeah, he went on to then start volunteering at a garden, and he had some mates go, "Come on, let's go for some beers." He's like, "Oh, I can't. They really need me in the garden tomorrow." And just really found some purpose that he could,
Amazing.
yeah, showcase in his life. So yeah, I'm lucky to be sent clients that really I can create a difference in. But in saying that, I don't think it's me that creates the difference. All I'm doing is I'm just guiding them down a path where they open a door and they just go, "Oh, it all makes sense now."
Yeah. But what a great job, career, I mean, purpose, whatever you want to call it, right? Like, what an incredible gift to be able to bring to people.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
pinch myself sometimes, and
It's
and
so good.
it's funny because how I fell upon it is I did a range of Tony Robbins events. So
Mhm.
as when COVID hit, I could do them online, which was great. I didn't have to fly anywhere. So when I came out of Unleash the Power Within, I went back into speaking to my work friends, and I'm just like, "This is amazing. Everyone here needs to do it. I'm HR. I'm going to organize it." And my one of the directors actually approached me, and she said, "Have you heard of Marissa Peer?" And I'm like, "No." She said, "She's got a softer energy. I think she'll connect with you." So my director was in and out. And I think it was the next week she was coming in the following day. And I'm like, "Oh, I better check out this Marissa Peer so I can say I have," right?
Mhm.
So I looked her up and found her on Mind Valley. And she did a group hypnosis while we're there. And I came out of that and I was just like, this is what I'm meant to do.
This is it.
And so I phoned up, I signed up for the course, and I was doing a psychology degree at the time. I was actually going to go in to be a clinical psych. And I ended up, yeah, shifting in that space and moving into the hypnotherapy. And now I'm a clinical hypnotherapist because I just feel like for me, it connects better, and I
Yeah.
feel like it has more impact.
Yeah. I think it does. And I think that for a long time, everybody just imagined you had like the little watch that you were going to dangle in front of people and make them bark like a dog and do crazy things. And
Yes.
but it's not. It's not. I mean, what I think was really interesting the entire time that we did that past life regression, I was absolutely there, but also 100% conscious of what you were saying. I mean, yes, it was very much a like riding the line, I guess would be a good way to describe it, where like, no, this is definitely there. Like I was definitely into it. But also, if you would have said where you're laying, I would have been like, I'm laying on the futon in my office.
Yeah.
Like I knew where I was. I could differentiate between where I was and where I was.
Yeah. And I think what the method that I was taught and the method that I use really has a real strong soul connection. And I think that's why you still have that physical awareness of everything,
Mm-hmm.
of where you are and stuff. But for me, if I'm being honest, and again, hope it's not too out there for some of your listeners and their thought process, but I believe the subconscious is the soul. I believe that
Hmm.
is the soul element. And so it just, like us, we take on a physical body. I feel like the
Hmm.
soul takes on a physical consciousness, which is that subconscious element. So That's why you can be in two places at once. You can be in
Yeah.
the space where you're reliving or revisiting these experiences while you're still physically here as well.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. That makes
Yeah.
total sense. That
So
does.
yeah, and I think that is one of the things that I mean, I've seen a heap of other clinical hypnotherapists that just get people to lay down and just do like NLP and positive programming and things,
Right.
and they get results, but that doesn't connect with everyone. Like some people need
Right.
to do the exploring themselves, you know, especially
Right.
those logical thinkers. Like, no, 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 you can't just tell me. I need to feel, I need to experience, I need to be there.
Yeah. Logical thinking is great until it's not.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. I mean, you can't logical your way out of everything. I mean, or logic your way out of everything. There's just some things that defy logic. And that's really frustrating for some people. I mean, for me, where I'm
yeah.
like, yes, but I'm going to want like, it doesn't make sense. No, I mean, a lot of things just don't make sense. And I think that there's some freedom in that. I mean, there's some fear in it for sure, but there's definitely freedom in it as well. So I love it that you can bring both of those things at the same time.
And I think it goes back to that coin, doesn't it? Like, there's the logical space, but there's also that open-mindedness and that spiritual
Hmm.
element that we all have. And it's
Right.
not an either or. When we
Mm.
can get to a point where we can heal, we can simultaneously do both those things at once. And it's interesting
Mhm.
because the study I'm doing around energy healing and energy work and that sort of thing, the teacher actually says specifically, don't believe everything I say. Go and test it. Go and
Yeah.
try it out and see if it works for you because, someone that's too mystical in thinking, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with this, but, they say, oh, if you want to get rid of those hiccups, go and dance under the moonlight naked and jump on your
Right.
right leg 3 times, right? So and people go, oh,
Right.
and they run and do it.
Yeah.
Um, and the jumping might get rid of the hiccups, right? So they might think, yes, this worked.
Yeah.
But you can be a practical spiritualist as well and still have that logical questioning. And I don't
Hmm.
feel like there's anything wrong with that. Right? I
No.
think they both complement each other a little bit.
Yeah. I actually had a pastor one time that told me, like, I was like, no, you don't understand. Like, I question everything. Like,
Yeah.
I am a hard sell on everything.
Yeah.
And his answer was, yeah, I actually think God kind of likes that. And I'm like, well, it's a good thing
Yeah.
because here I am. Like, but I think
And
you're right. I think there is value in that questioning, and it does help us come up with what fits in our own experience and what we believe.
and and God wouldn't have given us a mind if he didn't
Yeah.
expect us to think, right?
Right.
But
Yeah.
I feel like what I feel like being here, what our job to do is to experience. That's what I feel
Mhm.
like life is about, is
Mhm.
experience. And I feel like we take the collectiveness of those experiences and we take them back and we share them, right, with that
Mhm.
whole oneness and that whole space. And so we don't know what it's like to be tall if we're always short. So one
Mhm.
time we'll come back short, next time we'll come back tall. We don't know what it's like to be grateful if we've not experienced trauma and adversity. So there's some lifetimes we come in where everything's roses, and there's some where we're just like, oh my God, I can't believe I got through that, right? Um,
What happened?
yeah, what was that about? Um, so everything is purposeful. And I think that is the where I go into my spirituality. So I've still got that logical thinking, but I've also got that space to go, okay, let's get curious about this. Instead of letting it overwhelm me, let's get
Yeah.
curious and find out what purpose does it have, or just sometimes have faith that there is a
Yeah.
purpose for it.
Yeah. And eventually, sometimes we get to figure that out.
Yeah.
And I think that's really, I think it's beautiful what you can help people figure out. Even if it's just something that, something as important as helping that person who had a nightmare when they were 4, and you don't have to
Yeah.
carry that nightmare around with you anymore. That is
Yeah.
big, impressive work. So
Mm.
we know that you do these two things. So tell me, like, briefly, what else can people connect with you to hear more about? I know you have
Yeah.
podcasts. I know you have all kinds of things.
Yes, yes. So I have Catching the Octopus podcast, and
Mhm.
it is a leadership based podcast. However, I believe leaders come in all shapes and forms, just like humans do. So,
Mhm.
whether, it has some people that are leading from the front, some leading from within, some leading from behind, and some just leading by example. So, I have a range of different guests that come on there. And then I do a bit of a recap. So then I give my spin on what we spoke about as well. So if that interests people, they
Mhm.
can jump onto that. Um, I also do some online bits and pieces, some courses. I'm looking at doing a 1 day event local to me, though, in a couple of months, where I'm going to get some other spiritual gurus to come in and just to give some information about what they do, just to create that curiosity. And I feel like
Yeah.
if I look at ultimately what I do, is I love to create curiosity in people. And I think if that's how we approach life, then we are able to get through the adversity a little bit easier, and we are able to enjoy those beautiful things. So, my website,
Mhm.
getupandgrowconsulting.com.au, people can jump on there and learn more about me, or they can
Yeah.
connect on LinkedIn.
Perfect. And I will put all of your links in the bottom in the show notes. And if you live in Western Australia, maybe you want to go to our live event because there are
Yeah.
sometimes people who are connecting, on podcasts and in Australia and things like that. So it has been so much fun to talk with you tonight for me, morning for you.
Yes, yes.
And the greatest thing is that we are exactly 12 hours apart because if it was some other random number, I would never, ever, ever be able to make the time change work in my head.
I
So
agree.
I'm so grateful that we could make this work and that we could actually find an hour that worked for both of us. So thank you so much.
No, thank you for the opportunity. I love chatting about what I do, and I love impacting lives. So keep
Yeah.
doing what you're doing too,
Yeah,
Megan.
you as well. Thank you.